Plates landed around the table like little thrones. Ribeyes, potatoes, green beans, glistening with butter. One chair stayed empty. Mine. My mother-in-law smiled at me and said, "You're always dieting, right?" But then my husband stood up, slid his plate to me, and said the 7 words that changed our family. "Feed my wife, or we're not staying." There are dinners you forget before the dishwasher finishes. There are dinners you could sketch in, crayon a decade later, and get the salt shaker right. The night at my mother-in-law's was the second kind. It was a Sunday in April in Raleigh, pollen glued to everything, dogs panting on porches, church dresses hanging on chairbacks by 4 o'clock. Ben and I had been married 6 months. I'm an ER nurse at WakeMed, night shift, a life lived in fluorescent. He's a middle school band teacher, day shift, a life lived in brass. His mother, Margaret, is the kind of woman who makes a pie on a Tuesday because homemade tastes like decency. The trouble is she started using homemade as a synonym for my way. "Family dinner at 6, she'd texted. "Dress nice, no scrubs." I'd laughed and typed back a thumbs up from a supply closet because I was bandaging a kid's forehead and couldn't summon a paragraph. We arrived at 5:58 with flowers and a very specific kind of optimism, the kind you have when you're in love with a man whose mother has asked you at least 3 times how you like your steak, and then made a meatloaf. The house smelled like butter and expectation. Ben's sister, Kelsey, was already there with her husband and their toddler, who believes every dog is his cousin. Ben's dad, Tom, hovered near the grill like a second weather system. Margaret moved in the kitchen with the choreography of a person who measures self-worth in teaspoons. "Look at you," she said to Ben, adjusting his collar like she'd sent him to prom. Then she looked at me the way you look at a blouse that almost goes with a skirt. "And Riley," she said, her voice making my name into a nickname once removed. "You found a dress?" I had. I had also found my own lipstick, job, savings account, pre-approval letter for a townhome in our future. But tonight was about steak. "Need a hand?" I asked, the way daughters-in-law have asked since someone invented kitchens. "No," she said. "We've got it." And the we included her, her daughter, and her granddaughter. It did not include me. It rarely did. We set the table, gathered the people, said the prayer. Then the plates began to land. To Tom, a ribeye so thick it made a sound. To Kelsey and her husband, identical pieces, cross-hatched grill marks darker than the mood. To Ben, the same with extra green beans because he is 32 and still eats vegetables like they're a dare. To me, nothing. It took a second to become a pattern. I thought she would set mine last because I hadn't helped, because I was talking to the toddler, because the kitchen is small and her sense of fairness is precise in ways I do not understand. Then the kitchen emptied. Margaret folded her hands and smiled like a magazine. "Riley's always dieting, right?" she said to the air. "We'll get her a salad." I blinked. I had not said the word diet since high school. I had said I have celiac, at least 20 times since the engagement. I had offered to bring my own food politely a half dozen times because wheat hides where you don't expect it. Soy sauce, innate family systems. I'd texted her recipes, shyly at first, then the way lifeguards text rules. "I can eat steak," I said, my voice neutral, because my voice is the one people trust at 2 a.m. when the CT scan is taking too long. "Oh, honey," she said, standing, already moving toward the fridge. "You don't want this, fatty. I'll make something light." Kelsey shifted in her chair. "Mom," she said, warning folded into the single syllable like origami. Ben, my wow, I married him for a reason, looked between his mother and my empty placemat and used a tool he had not used enough in his 30s, his backbone. He stood up, picked up his plate, and slid it onto mine. Then he looked at his mother and said the 7 words that turned my stomach into a drumline. "Feed my wife, or we're not staying." For a second, everything was quiet except for the toddler, tapping a spoon like he was auditioning for rhythm section. Tom put a hand flat on the table the way men do when they would like to be anywhere but here. Margaret's eyes flicked from plate to son to me and back again as if the letters on a test had been scrambled. "Don't be dramatic," she said, the phrase women use when they want to dismiss a feeling and a person in one swipe. "She can have salad." She can have dinner, Ben said evenly. She's celiac. Steak is safe. You know this. And dessert can be safe too if you want it to be. Or we can go. Kelsey made a sound like a small train applauding. Tom said, "We grilled enough." He slid a steak onto a clean plate and set it in front of me like diplomacy. Margaret's mouth opened. I saw the old sentences loading. It's my house. My food. My rules. Then she closed it. She took a breath. Fine, she said, the most temporary of concessions. But no dessert. It's not worth the trouble. We ate. The steak was perfect, which might be the part that made me saddest. Ben squeezed my knee under the table once, not at me, for me. I smiled at the toddler until my face learned the expression for real. We talked about band concerts and pollen, counts, about recipes, and a neighbor who had installed a koi pond that looks like a hobby someone should have stopped at a kiddie pool. Dessert never came. I had brought gluten-free brownies wrapped in foil, my attempt at bridging a gap with sugar. They stayed on the counter. Margaret lifted the foil, wrinkled her nose, and said, "We'll save these, like words can freeze better than brownies." On the drive home, I was quiet. Like the good kind of tired, the good kind of quiet carries truth without showing you its teeth. "I'm sorry," Ben said, hands at 10 and 2. "You did good," I said, which is a sentence you say to a student after a recital and to a husband, after he says what you have asked him to say in every pre-marriage fight with the kind of speed that says he has always known the words. "Thank you." "I should have said it sooner," he said. "It should not have taken an empty plate." "It took exactly what it took," I said, "because I have learned on night's shift not to borrow trouble or rewrite time. I want to see if this is a pattern or a choice." "It's a pattern," he said, dry. "We'll make it a choice," I said. "Not just tonight, big choice." We didn't call that night. I didn't want to be a midnight in-law problem. I wrote an email the next morning during the 15 minutes of sunlight my night schedule hands me like a tip. I printed a copy. For us, not because I needed paper in case someone tried to gaslight me, I trusted Ben, but because paper is mercy. It lets you say a thing clean, before voices and old shame and someone's need for control turns your message into a different shape. Subject, Sunday. And going forward, "Hi, Margaret. Thank you for dinner. The steak was delicious. We need to talk about food, safety, and respect, so we can keep having dinners together. Here's what I need, going forward, to attend meals at your home. Celiac is not a preference. It's medical. Wheat exposure. ER for me. Steak and simple veg are safe. Diet jokes are not. Please serve me what everyone else is served with celiac-safe adjustments. If that's difficult for any meal, I'll bring my own food, and that's okay. Dessert isn't a measure of love, but no dessert for Riley. Isn't neutral. If the dessert is gluten, I'll bring mine, or we all skip it. What matters? Inclusion. If I'm singled out or not served, we'll leave and try again another time. No scenes, just a boundary. We love you. We want a relationship that is kind and safe. Love, Riley and Ben read it, nodded, and added one line at the bottom I hadn't thought to include. P.S. I'll call tonight to talk this through. Margaret didn't reply to the email. She picked up his call and performed hurt like a Broadway matinee. "I feed this family," she said, "and I'm told it's not enough." He breathed through his nose, good rhythm, and said, "Feed everyone, or we won't come." She hung up. We didn't go the next Sunday. We ate on our balcony. I called my mother, who lives 4 states away and thinks boundaries are an exciting new technology like solar panels. "Good," she said. "She'll adjust or she won't. You'll keep your blood sugar either way." It took 2 weeks for Margaret to invite us again. The text said, "Family dinner," and then below it, I found a gluten-free cake recipe. "Bring your brownies anyway." I exhaled. Ben texted, "We'll bring salad, because sometimes small actions are bridges, and sometimes they let you run if the bridge breaks." We showed up with greens and olive oil and nervousness. Margaret's kitchen smelled like vanilla. On the counter, a bundt cake that looked like the kind you write into a magazine recipe and a plate of my brownies, arranged like she had chosen an order that elevated both. "I tried," she said, not looking at me. Thank you, I said, not rolling my eyes. Dinner went fine. Margaret didn't tell me I was pretty, which in her mouth is usually a reworked insult. She didn't praise me for eating like a girl, which I have never understood. She talked about a new neighbor who plays trumpet badly. Ben offered help, a cousin who got married at the courthouse. Kelsey sighed with relief at the idea. And the yard, which she used to treat like a guest that needed impressing, but now treats like a friend. We ate the cake and the brownies. Nothing happened. That is the kind of victory you forget to celebrate because your old self still looks for fireworks. I wish the story ended there. Boundaries, concession, desert of peace. It didn't. People backslide, especially when they've built a personality out of feeding other people without noticing who stays hungry. A month later, at a bigger family gathering, 4th of July, slip and slide, deviled eggs with their political yard signs, Margaret performed the old play in front of a larger audience. She served hot dogs to the kids, burgers to the adults, and let my plate stay naked. She lifted a bun, waved it at me, and said, "Don't you people have worse things to worry about than bread?" I could feel Ben beside me, gathering his plate, ready to say the words again. I touched his wrist. "Boundaries are mine to keep," I whispered. I stood up. "We're leaving," I said pleasantly. "We'll try again next time." "You're ungrateful," she said, voice finding the old edge. "I'm hungry," I said. "Those are different." Kelsey looked at me and nodded in a way that made me want to both cry and run for office. Tom muttered something about suits and fireworks and walked inside. Ben took my hand. We left our salad on the picnic table, like a peace offering in a language no one wanted to learn. We didn't answer Margaret's calls for 2 days. We answered Tom's. "I want my family back," he said into Ben's voicemail. "I don't care about bread. I care about you coming over." I called him back. "We'll come when it's safe," I said. Safe includes being fed and being treated with kindness. We don't need fancy. We don't need gluten-free cake. We need a plate. "Got it," he said, and he did. The next week, he texted a photo of a package of gluten-free buns next to the grill. He wrote, "Burgers for all, we'll feed you, or Margaret and I will eat on the porch." He was trying a joke. I laughed and said we'd bring corn, but I knew we needed something bigger than a text thread and a grocery photo. The pattern wasn't just food. It was how Margaret treats in-laws, like the word "in" is conditional. I am a nurse, not a therapist, but ER life gives you a special skill set: triage. This wasn't a crisis. It was a chronic condition. It needed a plan. The plan arrived as a brainstorm at 2 a.m. between trauma cases with a social worker named Dee, who has a tongue piercing, and the calm of a person who has seen everything and still believes in Sunday mornings. "You need a mediator," she said, scrawling on a napkin. "Not a fight. A facilitator." She wrote 3 names: 1 pastor, 2 therapists. "And you need a hospitality rule. Write it down." I asked Tom and Kelsey if they'd come to a meeting. "Yes," Kelsey said immediately. Tom said yes, in the tone of a man who has just been told there is air at the top of the well. Ben told his mother we were meeting. She said nothing. Then, an hour later, "Fine, I will not be ganged up on. You will be loved up on, or you will leave early," I said, old nurse coming out of my mouth. We met in a therapist's office near North Hills with a wall that looks like every therapist's wall. Degrees, a plant that would survive anything, a couch that holds both confessions, and naps. Her name was Naomi. She didn't take sides. She did take notes. We started with food because it was concrete. "Hospitality," Naomi said, "means you make your guest feel safe. Not special, safe. It also means you don't turn a person's needs into an indictment of your character. It is not about you. It is about the guest." Margaret crossed her arms. "I feed everyone," she said, and Naomi nodded. "You feed everyone except Riley sometimes, which turns everyone into a weapon we move to respect." "You joke with Riley about her weight and her job," Naomi said. "Riley, tell us how that feels." "Like high school with a shinier plate," I said. "Like I am a test I didn't study for because the trick is there is no right answer." Ben squeezed my hand. Kelsey pressed her lips together like she was trying not to speak because she knows when she does, she doesn't stop until the truth is rearranged. Why do you do it? Naomi asked Margaret gently. Margaret's eyes did a thing I had not seen since our wedding rehearsal dinner, when she had looked at me and said, "He's not a dog, Riley," because I had offered him water before myself. She looked scared. Because she makes me feel... She stopped and tried a different sentence. Like I'm not enough for my son anymore. There it was. Not bread, not cake. The thing the internet calls enmeshment, and my grandmother called clinging to your baby like a shirt you refuse to give away, because the stain means the memory stayed. Naomi let the silence do some work. You can be enough for your son, she said, and not control his wife. Those things aren't opposites. We talked about Ben and me leaving the 4th on July. Good, Naomi said. Boundary held without fireworks. We talked about Tom's place. Tom can grill and buy buns. That is heavy lifting when you're changing a culture. We made a rule, the hospitality rule. We wrote it on paper in big letters because that's how you make family change. You write new rules and tape them to the fridge until the old rules fade. The hospitality rule: 1 table, 1 meal, everyone. Served. If one person has a need, we adjust for all, or we make sure the person with the need is served an equivalent plate without comment. No singling out, no jokes about food. If we mess up, we repair in the moment. I'm sorry, that wasn't kind. Here's your plate. If a guest isn't served, the hosts stop eating and fix it. If it can't be safe and kind, we reschedule. Everyone agreed. Margaret's signature looked like a sigh, but it was on paper. Sometimes paper is a promise, even inside families. We moved on. Naomi asked Margaret to say one true thing she appreciates about me. She swallowed. She loves Ben, she said, a little bitter but audible. She helped me organize the pantry after Tom's surgery, she added. She didn't make me feel like an idiot for how I store flour. Never would, I said. I didn't know there were 10 kinds. Riley, Naomi said, say one true thing you appreciate about Margaret. I inhaled. She shows up with casseroles when people are sick, and feeds dogs when people are at work, and knows how to fix a jammed garbage disposal without crying, which I admire. We left with the rule and 2 more appointments. Margaret called Margaret's sister, another Margaret, the Lord made many, to say she was in therapy. Her sister said why in a voice that made it a sentence. Because I want my family to come over for dessert, she said, and hung up like a person who understood scarcity better than gossip. The next dinner, our first with the rule, was a pot roast in August because Margaret cooks beef when she wants to heal, and pot roast is soup's cousin. Plates landed, mine landed. The toddler grew. Tom bought the expensive ice cream that tastes like someone dared you to buy cream and sugar and then didn't regret it. Margaret cut gluten-free brownies and regular blondies and put them on the same tiered tray with labels. She labeled things. Brownies, Riley safe, in block letters. She didn't comment when I took the brownies, and Ben took 1 of each. And Kelsey's husband ate both and asked for milk like a human Labrador. She apologized when she handed me the mashed potatoes and remembered they had flour in the gravy. I forgot, she said, catching herself, and I'm sorry. She handed me a bowl of plain mashed potatoes she had made and kept warm. For you, she said. The apology had no performance. It had Gravy's cousin, and I cried in my throat. We kept showing up. We didn't put Margaret in charge of my feelings. When she slipped, we left, returned, and tried again. She slipped less. I told her when I was tired. She told me when she missed her old, my kids need me for everything life, and we let that grief be something we could put down. In September, we hosted. We printed the rule and framed it on our wall because I am extra and because I want my house to feel like the version of church where you can breathe without a collar. Margaret arrived with a pie labeled Safe for Riley and Tom. My mom flew in and brought store-bought cookies because she respects my kitchen work the way she respects NASA work. She can't do it, and that's fine. Ben toasted the rule without toasting with alcohol because we were in a season of almost, and nervous and the kind of love that makes you want to sit down. We're having a baby, he said into everyone's shocked faces, then turned to me and handed me a napkin and put his head against mine. Margaret cried for 10 minutes and then went very still the way some people do when they are trying to hold on to a moment without the moment noticing. Then she did something I didn't expect. She asked, "What do you need from me to make your life easier?" I had an answer because I have a nurse's brain and a woman's calendar and the celiac rules carved into my gut. "When you watch the baby," I said, "no food jokes, no clean plate club, never dismiss a boundary, never use food to punish or reward. And please, if I say I need to feed the baby and you want to pass her around, hand her to me. I will always hand her back." "I can do that," she said, and I believed her. Pregnancy is an interesting sorority if you don't like sororities. Everyone has a baked good and an opinion. Margaret had new energy. She bought me a maternity pillow, the C-shaped one that looks like a punctuation mark hugging a sentence. She bought a book about celiac-safe baby food. She asked for a list of Riley-safe items. I sent it. She ordered them from Costco like a general staging for a good war. She slipped once and said, "Back in my day, we just ate what was on our plate." And then she caught herself and put her hands on the counter like prayer and said, "But you were trying not to die. I get it." And then came the second dinner, the one I will remember when I forget my own phone number. Our daughter, June, was 5 weeks old. We had slept the kind of sleep that makes you dream in colors you didn't choose. Margaret invited us over. "I'll cook," she said. "Eat in your pajamas if you want. No photos, no posting." We arrived at 3 p.m., because that is when June's mood schedule says we have a 90-minute window for social work and pot roast. The kitchen smelled like tomato and basil because pot roast had been retired for lasagna that day. On the table, place cards. Little folded notes from a stationery set someone had given her in 1998, and she had saved for something important. They said Tom, Kelsey, Ben, Riley, and June, Pop-Tart, the dog who had a water bowl at her seat because Margaret is Margaret. Under each, in very tidy printing in pencil because permanent takes time, a single word: welcome. She had made 2 lasagnas, regular, and gluten-free. She had put them on different shelves in the oven and labeled the casseroles with sticky notes like a person who had decided to respect chemistry. She put the gluten-free on my plate first. Then she put the regular on Ben's and everyone else's. She served salad without croutons and breadsticks for the civilians. She asked if I needed water first because nursing is a hydration game with high stakes. When we were done, she brought out a cake. She had frosted it terribly, and she looked proud because imperfection had never been her friend, and tonight it was. She cut a slice and handed it to me first. "Riley safe," she said quietly. It's a funny thing, how dessert can feel like a treaty. I ate it and thought about the day she had set a table for everyone except me and then corrected me on my own name. I thought about my husband sliding a plate toward me with love and a line I had waited for a decade to hear. I thought about the blue binder with the hospitality rule and the therapist with the plant that won't die. I thought about the baby who would someday eat in this kitchen, and I thought about the family she would meet. Flawed, loud, repairing in the moment, learning by doing, feeding everyone. After dinner, Margaret handed me a folded piece of paper because we can't help ourselves. It was a copy of the hospitality rule. She had written an addendum, her neat printing. "If you forget, apologize fast. Feed the tired one first. Grandchildren count as hungry even when they just ate." I taped it to the inside of my brain. Later, when the house was quiet enough to hear the dog's paws on linoleum, Margaret sat beside me on the couch and touched June's sock the way people reach for fire. "I'm sorry," she said, not loud, not performative, "for the first dinner, for the fourth, for making you earn your plate." I didn't make her do more penance, I just said, "Thank you." Then, "We'll mess up again. We'll fix it." "We'll fix it," she repeated, and I believed the way I believe in night shift. You show up, you work. You don't need anyone to tell you it matters, because you can feel it. It's been a year. The hospitality rule is still taped to her fridge. The binder is still blue. Sometimes she slips and says something that belongs to a different woman. She repairs. Sometimes I am so tired I want to eat crackers alone in my car. I show up anyway, with a baby strapped to my body and a nap scheduled like a vaccine. Sometimes Ben forgets to call first. Tom says, "We'll heat it up." And sometimes we have nights like this. Margaret stands at the stove and stirs soup. Tom sets bowls and spoons just so. Kelsey brings salad in a giant bowl that looks like a hat. Ben plays baby samba on the counter with a spatula. I sit, and I am handed a plate, then a spoon, then a slice of cake, and no one says anything about my body or the order of things. They just feed me. Their lives never were the same again. Neither was mine. Hospitality starts at the table, but it is not about food. It's safe plus kind plus same table. If it can't be all three, reschedule. Boundaries aren't goodbye. They're the recipe card you read from when the kitchen gets loud. Repair in the moment beats 1,000 perfect dinners. Say, I'm sorry, pass the plate, try again.